Hello viewers, I'm George Hybenensis. Today I'm going to talk about the rise of fascism for History A-Level, focusing on Italian foreign policy, mainly from 1928 onwards. First of all, what were the aims of Italian foreign policy under Mussolini? Well, there were several and they were overlapping. There was to retain the territory Italy already had, to expand Italy's territory, to make sure there were no significant threats to Italy, really to contain communism, avoid losing a war, to glorify the regime, to make Italians believe that their country was mighty and successful, and that would make them more loyal to fascism. Why did they want more territory? They wanted to conquer partly because they thought that conquest was an end in itself, moreover gain more space for Italians to live abroad, just to plunder natural resources as well, disseminate their ideology. So Italy would need to have some allies for some of these objectives, and indeed to avoid having any potent foes besides the Soviet Union. It was taken as read that the Soviet Union was going to be an enemy. The Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. It's what we now call Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan. It was 15 countries, and it was a communist system in the Soviet Union. All right, so an area that Italy had acquired just after the First World War was the South Tyrol. The South Tyrol borders Austria. Most people there are ethnically Austrian and indeed speak German as their first language. So Austria would quite like it back. When Hitler came to office in Germany, eventually united with Austria, he was always saying we must have the South Tyrol back. That was a direct threat to Italian territorial integrity. And indeed Mussolini moved some ethnic Italians into the South Tyrol so that the ethnic Austrian majority wasn't so high. As Nazis would see it, Austrians and Germans are the same nationality since they both speak German. So the relationship with Nazi Germany wasn't that warm at the beginning. 1933, the Nazi Party came to office in Germany. Then in 1934, there was a coup in Austria. It failed. The Nazi Party in Austria killed the Austrian Chancellor, Engelbert Dollfuss, and attempted to take over. However, the Nazis in Austria were defeated. At that time, Dollfuss's family was staying with Mussolini in Italy, so Mussolini was outraged. He moved lots of troops to the frontier with Austria, saying if Germany moves into Austria, we'll invade Austria from the south, and Hitler backed down. What else? Hitler then renounced any claim to the South Tyrol, which of course was against his principles because Adolf Hitler wanted to unite all Germans within one greater Reich, and here he was saying we're not going to take the South Tyrol into the German Reich. Let me see, there was a new German Chancellor, Schuschnigg, with whom Mussolini had a better relationship. And there were other times when there were tense moments between Italy and the Third Reich. Italy later formed the Stresa Front with France and the United Kingdom. That is an agreement signed at Stresa, which is very northern Italy, near the border with Austria, when they agreed that they wouldn't allow Austria and Germany to unite. In fact, in 1938, Mussolini changed his mind and said, fine, you can unite, but remember, you've got to vow that the South Tyrol stays with us. And indeed, Hitler did honour that to the end. If he'd won the Second World War, perhaps Hitler would have broken that pledge, as he did so many others. So, expansionism, I mentioned previously how in October 1935, Italy invaded Abyssinia, which is now called Ethiopia. There were several incidents precipitating this. The Wal incident, where Italian troops well inside Abyssinian territory fought against the Abyssinian army. The Italians were defeated, scores of them were killed. There was a wish to avenge the defeat of Adawa of 1896, just to gain more territory. Abyssinia was one of only two independent countries in Africa at the time, the other one being Liberia. Abyssinia had managed to retain its independence partly because it's the most mountainous country in Africa. It's got lots of abysses, hence the name Abyssinia. The other thing, it was a Christian country, so European countries couldn't annex it, claiming we're spreading Christianity. Now, the Ethiopians had their own Coptic form of Christianity. They were not Catholic Christians, and Mussolini could say Catholicism was the only true Christianity, so bringing that. There were other things, such as Abyssinia had slavery, which Mussolini said he would abolish, and indeed he did, which is not to say that his motives in annexing Abyssinia were high-minded. Anyway, not everyone in Abyssinia was Amharic. The Amharas are the main ethnic group. There were other ethnic minority groups, some of which didn't like the Amharas, and not everyone there was a Christian. There was a Muslim minority. Mussolini said he was going to liberate them, and he was a friend of Muslims everywhere. So it was quite difficult going for the Italian army, but they did win in the end. They had air power, whereas the Abyssinians had only one plane. Italy had signed a convention promising that it got rid of all its poison gases years before. In fact, Mussolini had been stockpiling poison gas in Somalia for years before this, and they had used it very extensively in the Abyssinian campaign. The Red Cross came across thousands of Abyssinians who were afflicted by poison gas, and the Italian government denied and denied using it until the evidence became so absolutely overwhelming they were compelled to acknowledge that they had used it. What else? So when the war was going badly, the British Foreign Secretary Sir Samuel Hoare and the French Prime Minister Pierre Laval, they had the Hoare-Laval proposal, which was perhaps the Emperor of Abyssinia, Haile Selassie, would be allowed to keep a third of the country, 2/3 that would go to Italy, and there'd be some sort of corridor for camels to the sea. As the war was not progressing well for Italy, it thought the Italians might accept this. Anyway, it didn't happen. There was an outcry in the United Kingdom about this because it was just months after the national government won an election on the basis of collective security, which is to say if any member of the League of Nations was invaded, other League of Nations countries would come to the aid of that country. And here France and the UK were backing out on that commitment because they didn't want another war, and they saw Italy as a potential ally against Germany if there was a Second World War. So Mussolini was canny enough to pick a weak enemy. Abyssinia was quite a puny country. Then the Spanish Civil War, which I mentioned already. Germany was on the same side, the nationalist side in the Spanish Civil War. So that helped cement the relationship between Germany and Italy. It was a good training ground for Italian troops. This was not a war of national survival. They didn't have to commit too many soldiers, but they got some combat experience, could test out their weapons, and indeed they won. They didn't want the Republican side in Spain winning because that would mean an anti-fascist government was there, not too far away from Italy. The Italian Navy sunk some Soviet ships which were bringing weapons for the Republican side in the Spanish Civil War. What else? Italy developed a cordial relationship with Japan. Not that that was very useful to them, as Japan was on the far side of the world. As I mentioned, Albania was annexed, and there was scarcely a ripple of protest. The Italian Navy was quite large, thought to be mighty. So what else? Yeah, Italy eventually left the League of Nations. They felt they'd been mistreated by the League of Nations, which had condemned them for their invasion of Abyssinia. Mussolini pointed out that France and the United Kingdom had invaded other African countries in the 19th century, but people said, well, times have changed, that's no longer acceptable. We didn't have the League of Nations back then. We didn't have anything like the right to national self-determination. So Italy began turning up anti-British propaganda and radio broadcasts to the Arab world. Mussolini quite wanted Tunisia, which is a French colony, Egypt, where the British army was stationed. Though Egypt was formerly independent, then he would control the Suez Canal. He thought about getting Palestine, the places which are holy to Christians and Muslims. Anyway, that didn't happen for him. Anyway, as you will know, the Second World War broke out in September 1939. Previously, Mussolini tried to play the honest broker at the Munich Agreement in September 1938. The beginning of the Second World War, Mussolini said to Hitler, I can only come in if you give me this huge wish list of arms and natural resources, like coal and so on. It's far more than Germany could afford. Mussolini knew that. He wanted Germany to win, but not too easily. They'd previously signed the Pact of Steel, but this was only committing Italy to go to war on Germany's side if Germany was attacked, whereas in fact Germany had attacked Poland. I know the Germans faked a Polish attack on themselves by killing some concentration camp prisoners whom they dressed in Polish army uniforms, but Italy knew that Poland had not attacked Germany. It was the other way around. Italy also signed the Anti-Comintern Pact with Germany and Japan, as in they were against communism all over the world. So these are some of their objectives and some of the methods that the fascist government used to achieve some of their goals. And for the first few years, they were fairly successful. That's enough for today.